because of all the internet, people are going to be online. So to all those who are online and to all those who are alive here, may we all now, maybe another 30 seconds before we begin. Thank you for coming. Or today, on the 18th, not yet. Am I ready? Tell me when it is exactly 5:15. Abue, huh? Abue. On the 18th day of the 8th month of the year 2022, we are all so privileged to be gathered here in the Guild House of NUSS in order to celebrate our dear friend, Professor K.K. Phua, on his 80th birthday. Let us give a round of applause. And now to those who are online, they are international. They don't understand that when you say Phua, in Singapore it is Phua. Over there, some people say Phua. And actually, one of the speakers online will say Pan. Well, because that's the correct Chinese pronunciation. But anyway, what we are now gathered today is to celebrate his life, his vision on looking beyond the frontiers of science. And now when we first started getting all of this thing ready with, getting the whole volume ready, and you can see it took quite a bit, the editorial department, they kind of said, hey, how come you call this book Looking Beyond the Frontiers of Science instead of saying Looking to the Frontiers of Science? And now here is where I have to explain to the people who are not scientists in the sense of researchers trying to push the frontiers of science, that the reason why you want to now say looking beyond is that as researchers, you all have to sort of think outside the box. Now, how do you think outside the box? First, make sure that whatever you think is correct within the box. You cannot say, hey, I have a new theory of quantum field theory, which conflicts with what everybody else knows to be the basis of quantum field theory. And so what you need is to now think outside the box. And when you now have such an idea, to now share it with other experts. Because maybe you missed something. And then what you need to do is to say, my friend Baki, he's an expert. Now he can now look at it and he says, and you all know how Pauli first reacted. Yes? How did Pauli react when this idea of electron spin, that it is this thing that is spinning? He says, just like Lorentz also says, that's the wrong thing. But when you now begin to share it with somebody else, and then somebody else go as an experimentalist to check on it, well then you say, that is therefore confirmed and the frontier of science has gone beyond. But now in all of this, it's very important for the, let's say, the experts to look at what you have said and to agree. And now we all know Fermi, Enrico Fermi. You know everything about weak interaction, Fermi theory, right? Well, he wrote an article on this four-fermion theory of weak interactions. And you know where he submitted it to? Nature. I mean, today, you want to have your paper published in Nature. Although sometimes today they publish it in the New York Times first. So what did Nature say? The referee said, it contains speculations too remote from reality to be of interest to the reader. Reject. And you know what Fermi did? Did he then say, alamak? No. What did he do? he submitted his paper to Il Nuovo Cimento in Italy, because he's an Italian. And then that became the basis for many further developments and articles. And likewise, I would like to always tell this to my students, Bose, I don't mean the Bose speaker, I mean the Bose-Einstein statistics, Bose. Well, he was from Calcutta, or Kolkata, and he had a paper on the Planck radiation formula. And he submitted it to Philosophical Magazine. And what did Philosophical Magazine do? They just said, no. But what did Bose do? Bose, what he did was to write a letter to Albert Einstein and say, hey, Professor Einstein, could you translate this paper from English into German and then publish it in the Zeitschrift für Physik? Because in those days, German journals were the center, right? And now, what did Einstein do? Einstein is so busy. Is he not busy? He was by then very famous. Oh, everybody would be looking for him. But Einstein read the paper, translated it into German, and then published it in Zeitschrift für Physik. And then he added to what Bose's idea was, and it has now become Bose-Einstein statistics. So you see, it is important to be able to have your work brought to the attention of the real experts so that they can then either add to it or, in fact, confirm it. And so what KK had, he graduated from Yangzheng. I don't know how to translate that. To grow properly, Yangzheng. But anyway, he's a graduate of Catholic High School, and he went to University of Birmingham and got a PhD with SCRM, the skyrmion, the very famous skyrmion. And he, after 2 years of postdoc, came back to Nanda, to Nanyang University, as a young assistant professor. But now he had a vision. He wanted to make Singapore as a hub to exchange news of science and ideas, because Singapore, being in Asia, would actually be a good location for a hub. So KK had that vision. But for most people, we say, yes, I have that vision. I dream about it. But KK did not. Incidentally, if you look at the book, the cover of the book, there's a horse. Well, for the Chinese, the zodiac. KK was born in the year, 80th. So 1940, I forget. 2022 minus 80 is 19, You're not getting old, right? So he was a zodiac horse. And now a horse is not one to just simply sit idly, yes? The horse is one that actually goes out. Well, KK, with that vision, actually started laying connections. Because if you want to make Singapore a hub, you want to now have the connections so that when you invite, people would actually want to come. Because in those days, people don't know Singapore. Where is Singapore? Oh, somewhere in China, right? Because when I went to the United States, they all say Singapore, or somewhere in China. Well, he actually went around to all the centers, to Trieste, to US also, to Stony Brook, in order to build this connection. And then in 1978, he actually was able to organize International Conference on Frontiers of Physics. And you know how many participants came? 180. Not from, the neighbor countries, but from around the world. He actually succeeded in having this conference, and one of the speakers was Abdus Salam. And now for those who are not familiar with the field, Abdus Salam in 1978 had not yet gotten the Nobel Prize. But he came, and he was one of the speakers, and KK wanted to have it published. But there's no publisher in Singapore in those days. And so you know what he had to do? He went to the Singapore National Academy of Science and then say, hey, would you publish it? Well, I guess with some convincing, they did. But you know, there's the difference. Today, if you go to Singapore National Academy of Science and say, where is the 2 volumes of this proceedings? They'll say, somewhere it's lost. That's the difference. Why? Because Singapore National Academy of Science is not a publisher. And so, what KK decided is that there should be a publishing company. And you know, again, as a good horse, he went to Salam and he went to Yang and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? And you know what they did? They say, good, go ahead. And now that is a big risk in those days. Because here you are in Singapore, not many people know where Singapore is, and you want to compete against North Holland, Elsevier. Oh, these are the big publishers. You want to have your journals now in some way be subscribed. I know in most universities, like our university, the budget for journals is limited. And you know what Elsevier did? Is to up the subscription price in order that there's not much money for anything published by World Scientific. But nonetheless, KK with the World Scientific managed to indeed start and have offices all over the world, in London, including US, and so on, so that today, World Scientific Publishing Company has a 40-year celebration, because that was around 1980, 40th year, 1982, right? 81, 82. But anyway, that is indeed the story of World Scientific. And later on, when Max comes to speak, where is Max? Oh, yes, he will tell you something, and I will introduce him. But anyway, so there is this birth of World Scientific, which is necessary for helping researchers in this area be able to be part of the creative scientists. Because you want there to be more researchers from this area to have this advancement of the frontiers. And so that's what World Scientific is doing. And in 1983, KK organized the first Asia-Pacific Conference in Singapore, and there were 340 participants. And you know, the participants this time included Professor Yang, Chandrasekhar, for those who know something about, Feshbach, for those who know in physics, Hurst, Arima from Japan, Maki, and also Feng Daxuan, who will be speaking later on. And that conference was so very, let's say, recognized, important, that you know the participants, a selected few participants, were invited to a dinner at Istana. For those who are in the internet, they'll say, I don't know what is Istana, but that is a government residence, and there was a state dinner hosted by Tony Tan. And I still remember that, and I wish I have a photo of it, because you know I want to also have my own album. But I couldn't find it. You know why? Because when you are in such a state dinner, you sit in the table, and then you don't bring around this little phone and then say, I want to take this picture, I want to take that picture. So I have no record of it. But it is, indeed, there was this dinner. And so that began a series of conferences that was organized by KK. And I want to come to 1990. That's like 7 years later. Meanwhile, there had been many conferences, and later, when we have Kenneth Young, he will tell you about these other conferences. But in 1990, there's an international conference on high energy physics. It's every 4 years. It's a big international conference where there can be 1,000 participants. And those participants have to be by special invitation. Each university is only given an allotment. You know, some universities don't get any allotment, but that's too bad because you don't have a strong group in high energy physics. So this was a big international conference, and it was held at Raffles City. And it was organized because Singapore, with KK, we did not have the experience. And so we had to get Yamaguchi from KEK, Tsukuba, to help. And for that, there was a special preparation meeting on 1989, Thanksgiving. And I remember I flew from New York to KK, to Tsukuba, for a short meeting and then flew right back. But that was a very important one because we then knew how to organize. And that conference, again, had international speakers, and it included Professor Yang, Professor Nambu, Professor Marshak, whom I know because he was president of City College, of City University, Bioken, and Gelman, and many others. So this is how the Singapore became such a big, let's say, recognizable hub that people indeed know about Singapore and would want to come and participate. Well, I will now go on from 1990 to 1991. In 1991, there were some physicists in New York, in China, in United States, who wanted to organize something called Overseas Chinese Physics Association. There's some political issue that happened, you know, and so there was a lot of the physicists in United States that wanted to help bring the Chinese physics community together. And so it was founded in 1991, and we wanted to have recognition of Outstanding Young Researcher Award. And now when you start an organization, we don't have access to Lee Foundation. We don't have access to whatever other foundation. So you know what? We got KK to help raise money. Now, I don't know where he raised the money, but we had funds to have the first Outstanding Young Researcher Award. And you know who was the awardee? For those who are in physics, they would know. Zhang Shoucheng, Shoucheng Zhang. He was the first winner, 1992. And now, where did we have that ceremony? Well, that's where we worked with American Physical Society, APS. And at the annual meeting in Washington in 1992, we have, if you look in the book, you'll find a picture. We have both Lee and Yang and Patrick, Paul Chu and Patrick Lee as members of the selection committee and giving this award to Zhang Shoucheng. So that was 1992. And then in 1993, there was further an idea which KK sort of urged us to have, which is that there should be an Achievement in Asia Award. Because the other one is Outstanding Young Researcher Award was from US. And there, the first winner is the Zhongchan Ouyang, or in Mandarin would be Ouyang Zhongchan. And he is a real academician, a biophysicist, and who is now very famous worldwide. So he was the first winner in 1993. So this went on. And then KK, you know, he's always thinking beyond. Then he says, look, it's good that we work with APS, that we indeed have such yearly meetings giving awards to encourage the young researchers, but that there should be a conference or symposium in Asia so that more of the people from Asia can in fact participate. And so there became a question, how do we have this overseas conference? And KK went looking and he approached Li Ka-shing. I guess we all know Li Ka-shing, right? Well, Li Ka-shing is a Teochew Lang, Chaozhou Ren. Yeah. Well, his home is Shantou. So he says, yeah, you want to have that? Good. It must be held in Shantou. And we say, well, first we say, oh, shouldn't it be in Beijing? Shouldn't it be, in Shanghai? But since the money is there only if you come to Shantou, so we have our first OCPA conference, OCPA 1, in Shantou in 1995. And there, Professor Yang with his wife, Professor Lee with his wife, and Professor Y.T. Lee and his wife, they were all invited. And the Shantou University, they were very considerate. They say while the husbands were at these meetings, how about the wife? Oh, they need some local guide. And so Shantou University, they actually arranged for a guide for Professor Yang and the wife, and Professor Lee and the wife. And the rest is history that you can look up. And then in 1997, there was a conference in Taipei to celebrate the 90th birthday of Wu Dayu, Dayu Wu. And there again was a very important conference, bringing together many people. And then in year 2000, there's also PA3, which is held in Hong Kong. And it was to remember Wu Dayu, to remember Xie Xide, and to remember C.S. Wu, because they all passed away just before that conference. And so there was a special session, and you can look up in the book for pictures that bring back memories. But okay, there will be other speeches by someone to remember Okpa. I will now come to IAS, the Institute of Advanced Studies at NTU. Oh, that was a very important achievement because, the Institute for Advanced Study was started for Einstein in Princeton. Well, KK had the idea, maybe we should also have something like an Institute of Advanced Studies in Singapore. And NTU is a perfect site. Why? Because NTU has this Nanyang Executive Center, NEC, which is set apart from the main campus. The main campus is very busy. You have so many students, they're all running all over. But NEC, Nanyang Executive Center, is separate, and it has its own hotel for the speakers, own dining area, cafeteria, and of course, auditorium. So it is a perfect site for inviting international scientists to come together and share the latest news, the latest LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, the latest results from whatever string theory. Well, that was the place where IAS lasted from 2005 to 2018. And the first one was held in 2005 with Professor Xu Guanlin as the president. And let me read to you the title of that, because when KK organizes a conference, he always has a very appropriate title. What is that title? Because the year 2005 is the 100th year of, do you know what it is? In 1905, special relativity, right? So this now, 2005 is therefore looking to the next 100 years of physics. But the title didn't stop there. And its impact on engineering, life science, and technology, with the speakers Robert Laughlin, Alexander Pines, Akira Tonomura, whom I really remember, Wu Mao Kun, Sankar Das-sama, Shen Zhixun, and others. So that was, again, a very important first IAS. And then subsequently, in 2007, there was also a special one for CN Yang with the 85th birthday. But what actually happened is IAS, during its 12 years of operation under KK's directorship, there were so many workshops, so many, let's say, benefits that everybody had. And I will now let Lars Brink take over. But before I do that, I better introduce Lars Brink. Lars Brink is from Sweden. He is from the Department of Fundamental Physics, Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg, Sweden. And he's a superstring, supersymmetric Yang-Mills theorist. But what's more important is that he is a member of the Swedish Royal Academy of Science and a former chair of the Nobel Committee for Physics. And with his support and with his fame, he really helped KK with the IAS in organizing many subsequent symposia. So I will now turn the floor over to Lars Brink.
Thank you for letting me give this little speech for KK on his birthday. I'm very happy to do it. And that also brought me to think about KK and all its contributions to science and to the world. And when I do think about it, it's very interesting to see how he has constantly broken new grounds at crucial times. So KK, in a sense, was lucky to grow up in post-war Singapore, where a bunch of very clever people decided to make Singapore into a great economic power. Not necessarily a scientific power, but great power. But that was the basis. So in Singapore at the time, one knew how to read invoices, packing orders, but not scientific texts. And KK decided to change that. He went to England for a PhD, and he was very successful. And he could have joined, the exodus of Singaporeans who continued in England or United States, but he went home. He had a mission at home. He realized that Singapore is an exotic, it's a safe place, it's full of enterprising and hardworking people, and it's within reach from most major cities in the Southeast Asia. So the first thing where we noticed him was in 1978, when the big particle physics conference, so-called Rochester Conference, was held in Tokyo. And there was more than 1,000 people going there. And KK managed to organize a pre-meeting. And I was invited. I was very happy to be invited. Unfortunately, I couldn't go there. It was too expensive for me to reroute my ticket. But that was the first time I heard about KK. Little did I know that he was only a year older than me. I thought he was an older gentleman from that time. So, but then he also got involved, of course, in another thing, because at that time, it was not easy for emerging countries, for third world countries to publish, because journals were very expensive and they were very elitistic. And Abdul Salam has had this idea that it must be liberalized. It must be so everyone must have a chance to publish. I mean, he had set up his institute in Trieste to help third world countries. And the next thing was to also see that there would be journals. And he asked KK, and KK and Doreen managed, to set up World Scientific in a very short period of time, get established, get journals with good editorial boards, and also to distribute these journals freely to many, many very poor institutions, which was a great thing, and which the world is still, thanking KK for, I hope. So that took him, it was very busy. But then he was also really busy to let Singapore come into sight. So that when the next big conference in particle physics was to be held in 1990, he managed to get it to Singapore. And again, around 1,000 people came to Singapore. It was a big fight to be able to get there because it was a limited number. And he, of course, had a fantastic organization, marvelous banquets, etc., and had managed to get most of the leading particle physicists to come there. So that was very good. At the same time, it presented Singapore, which was one of these emerging tiger economies. And it was very interesting. Most people left with extra suitcases filled up with shirts, suits, fake watches, etc., of very good quality, which was another sign that Singapore was on the move. After that, things sort of cooled down a bit, and the next project that KK had was to set up this Institute for Advanced Study, which was a very difficult thing to do because there are few of them in the world, and you cannot just make any institute an Institute for Advanced Study. But they got a good endowment from the Lee Foundation, good support from NTU, and the institute was a real success. It concentrated on organizing meetings of all scales, world-class meetings, but also local meetings, public talks for students, and it was very busy. There was at least a meeting a month, of different kinds, and I got involved in it later on, and I spent some time, some of my best years, in Singapore, helping with these meetings. And by 2018, I think the Institute was on top, to organize world-class meetings. When the catastrophe happened, that the new president came, and he didn't know about anything. So the Institute was lost for KK, for me too. And that was because of incompetence, greed, jealousy, you name it. And I can assure you that Singapore's reputation in fundamental physics fell as a stone after that. However, the memory of it is still there. It did put Singapore on the map. And now when we celebrate KK, we should celebrate him for all his contributions to science, to Singapore, Southeast Asia, and to the world. And thinking about it, KK, you really have an amazing record. So thanks for letting me give this talk.
Wasn't it wonderful to hear some tribute from Sweden? But now, next we will hear the tribute from Hong Kong. Kenneth Young, who is the Emeritus Professor of Physics from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He is himself a graduate of Caltech, but he came back to Hong Kong, and he is in elementary particles, field theory, high energy, dissipative systems, and he has been Pro-Vice Chancellor of Chinese University of Hong Kong. He is a Fellow of American Physical Society, Chairman of the Hong Kong Research Grants Council, Vice President of Association of Asia Pacific Physical Societies, and most important for people interested in it, Vice Chairman of the Board of Adjudicators of Shaw Prize. I don't know if other people know about the Shaw Prize. But anyway, let us now listen to Kenneth Young.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to offer a few words of congratulations to my good friend KK Phua on his 80th birthday. Time really flies. I recall first meeting KK in the mid-1970s through a mutual friend. We discovered many common interests. It was a different age 45 years ago. No internet, for example, and the sense of being rather isolated outside the mainstream was quite strong for scientists in Asia, especially for those of us in small places such as Singapore and Hong Kong. And the challenges were especially acute in high energy physics, which was just undergoing a revolution with field theory becoming dominant. In those situations, the opportunity to come into contact with another physicist in the region interested in broadly similar fields was, of course, a matter of much pleasure. But more importantly, for KK, it provided the motivation and the impetus to contribute in very significant ways in building bridges and institutions that would help to change the situation of regional isolation in science. The next encounter that I can remember was the 1978 International Meeting on Frontiers of Physics held in Singapore. KK, then only in his mid-30s, was evidently the driving force behind the event. I can fix the date well from the proceedings of that meeting, published under the auspices of the Singapore National Academy, and labeled as edited by KK Phua et al. In retrospect, I think that must have been KK's first foray into the world of scientific publishing and sign of things to come. In my records, I next find the proceedings of the first Asia Pacific Physics Conference, Singapore, 5 years later in 1983. It was in many ways a successor to the meeting in 78, and there was a very conscious effort to reach out beyond Southeast Asia and to connect to the larger scientific communities in Asia. Moreover, this meeting was auspiciously named the first Asia Pacific Physics Conference, APPC 1, and it started the series with the latest one to be held to be APPC 15 in Korea, August 2022. The whole series, now a notable event that brings Asian physicists together, was in effect started by KK and driven by his enthusiasm and organizing abilities. However, the most significant feature for that event in '83 is that the volume of conference proceedings, I dug it out, is listed as published by World Scientific Publishing Company in 1984. World Scientific must have been just established, very much a fledgling organization. And then the tradition developed there in APPC 1 that attendees would decide the approximate date and the host for the next one. So APPC 2 was held in Bangalore in 1986, hosted by the Indian Physical Society, and I was very much involved in organizing APPC 3 in Hong Kong in 1988. The decision to form an association of Asia Pacific Physical Societies, AAPPS, was taken during APPC 3 in Hong Kong. Xian Yang and Michichi Konuma were the leaders, and both KK and I were able to support the process, and we both served on the council for a number of years thereafter. Through those roles and through attendance at a number of APPCs thereafter, I had many occasions to interact with KK and to learn from him. And for more than a decade, until recently, KK has led the IAS at NTU, even as he was running World Scientific. To many of us in the region, we know of IAS through its conferences and workshops that brought high-level science to NTU, to Singapore, and indeed to the entire region. The emphasis on basic science was a welcome complement to the enviable developments that we see in this region in applied science and in engineering, and a timely one. I remember with fondness and gratitude attending a number of these meetings, both several at the frontiers of science, celebrating great physicists, and also one event on liberal education in Asia. Even now, our paths are connected in projects of interest. We are both on the editorial committee for 2 volumes celebrating the 100th birthday of Xian Yang, I think to come out in a few months. The second volume, consisting of scientific papers, will be published by World Scientific. In this matter, I find myself in just a few days ago in the slightly, shall we say, strange situation of signing a contract on behalf of the editorial committee, which includes KK as a member, that's on one side, and on the other side is WSPC, World Scientific, as the contracting party. At the same time, even as we speak, World Scientific has agreed to publish a set of 4 volumes about the first 15 years of the Shaw Prize, also scheduled for this year. I'm sure KK would not mind me saying so, but it will be a miracle if either of these projects will make money for World Scientific. And KK's enthusiasm in supporting these endeavors shows how he recognizes values larger than just commercial success. KK has accomplished several parallel careers in the last few decades. Now that the next generation is gradually taking over some of the responsibilities at World Scientific, I think we can all wish that KK will enter another phase of happy yet productive life and contribute to science and society in yet other ways as an elder statesman with stores of wisdom to share. Happy birthday.
Okay, now that we've had 2 such videos from the internet, we now come to live speaker, and I have the privilege of introducing Bernard Tan Tiong Gi, who is an emeritus professor of physics. Now, he got his PhD in 1969. I checked it up, 1969 in electronics from Oxford University, and then came back to serve at NUS. Well, he's an expert on microwave applications of semiconductor, digital musical sound analysis, psychoacoustics of, I don't know, something or other. I didn't even know that there is psychoacoustics, but okay, it's good to know that. Well, he is the former Dean of Science, former Head of Physics, and the Dean of Students, and former Director of the Center for Maritime Studies at NUS. But when I dug further into his career, I was so impressed with something. He got a 1989 Fellow of Trinity College of Music in London. You remember he got Oxford 1969, but 20 years later, he got the Fellow of Trinity College Music. And he is the member of the board of directors of Singapore Symphonia Company, and he has orchestral compositions performed by the Singapore Symphony Orchestra in 2003, Piano Concerto 2002, Violin Concerto 2005, Guitar Concerto 2013, and now maybe we should ask him to now play. Let's, Bernard. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nipong. I think I will, in my short time, but perhaps talk a little bit more about my more personal interactions with the great KK. As you said, I came back in 68, 69, and in fact, KK came back from Birmingham around the same time. So we are more or less contemporary. But my most abiding memory of KK at the time was that, what impressed me was that he came back from Birmingham. We had a common friend who had just had a PhD viva, but he had to amend his thesis. Somehow it wasn't amended. And KK took the trouble to carry this heavy thesis all the way back from Birmingham to Singapore. I do not know whether we succeeded in doing this, but this epitomizes to me KK. We know what a great organizer and physicist he is, but this personal memory shows me that he's a man with a great heart, really, and all of us who know him very well, we know this well, but sometimes we forget it. Now, he was at Nanta, I was at, not NUS, there was no NUS, University of Singapore. And one of the things that we fondly recall was that there were two physics departments, one at Nanta and one at University of Singapore. And of all the departments within the two universities, I think the physicists were the most closely aligned. And in fact, because they were so closely aligned, even before the merger to form NUS, that they came together, and I'm very proud to say that KK and myself were sort of at the forefront of organizing what we now know as the Institute of Physics Singapore. So in a sense, that was the first move of KK towards organizing physics within the nation and its future forays into internationalization. Now, of course, soon after that, other people have recounted his Frontiers of Physics Conference and the Asia Pacific Conference. If I dig hard enough in my office, maybe I can find the proceedings, hopefully. But of course, when he went and did his great move of trying to do battle with Springer and all these people, we were quite amazed, But if you look back, there's nothing to be amazed about, because in KK's mind, he always has this ambition to put Singapore and this part of the world on the map. And of course, he has been vindicated many, many times over, Now, there are other people who will talk about these achievements, but I just want to draw attention to one or two others. We have mentioned the foundation of the IAS at NTU. Sometimes I wish it had been in NUS, but it's NTU, never mind, it's okay. But I think I have to say that, I must say here that the IAS only thrived because of KK's energy, his dedication, and his unparalleled network with international scientists. I'll say that again, unparalleled network with international scientists. A network which I don't think anyone in the world has got. And the IAS, which flourished over that time, was due mainly to that. Of course, KK did other things like funding and organizing, but his network, which is truly unparalleled, made IAS what it is today. And I really hope NTU understands that and realizes the achievements of the IAS and applauds KK for that. Two other things I want to mention, which are perhaps smaller, but which are important. We talk about KK's interest in physics, but he and I were privileged to, for a number of years, organize a rather unusual conference. We believed in not just science and physics, but we believe in the unity of a lot of other human achievements, particularly achievements in the arts. So for a number of years, he was far-sighted enough to join hands with some of us to organize a conference on creativity in the arts, science, and technology. And in the few short years that we did this, he was able to use his network. He also has a network of people he knows who are not scientists, artists, and all that. So every time we had a conference, we would have internationally renowned artists or writers or painters, as well as scientists, to talk about how creativity is so common to all these different fields of study. And of course, we didn't sustain it beyond a few years, but I think in the few years that we did it, this was a unique kind of sort of seminar that we had in Singapore, because very few people had the vision of trying to promote different areas, and KK had that vision. One other thing which I will mention that KK has, and which also points to his other passion, his passion for younger people and for making sure that they have the right attitudes of science and education. So a couple of years ago, I was privileged to join hands with him in organizing the first ever international journal devoted to physics education in this part of the world. And this journal is called The Physics Educator. And to the physicists in the audience, I hope you will support it and talk about it, because we had the vision, and KK had this distinct vision of putting physics on the map for young people, not just in the world, but particularly in this part of the world. Because he, like many other distinguished Asian physicists, see that perhaps the future of the world in science and physics may arise from young people in this area. So he went along with many of us and formed this new journal, and so far it has done not too badly, but we need the support of many physicists in this area. Now, there are so many things I could say about KK, but I've known him for so many years, and he, as you all know, is a visionary, a person of boundless energy. But I have to say that most of all, KK is a person who is a very good friend, a person with the highest moral integrity and ethics, and someone you can always rely on as a friend who will never let you down. So from all your friends in Singapore, KK, a very happy birthday, and may you have many more birthdays. Thank you.
Yes, Bernard, I meant to say that you are the chief editor of this physics education. No, what's the journal called? The Physics Educator. You know, I'm getting old. Right? But anyway, the next speaker is a very well-known speaker, and I will introduce him because he has many titles. It's Feng Daxuan, Daxuan Feng, who is a physicist following the Belt and Road Initiative, and he's become the spokesman. And he is the Light of Civilization 2017 Chinese Cultural Exchange Person of the Year. He was a professor at Drexel. He has been at NSF Director of Theoretical Physics, Vice President of Research at the University of Texas in Austin. And he's also the Senior Vice President of National Cheng Kung University, National Tsinghua University in Taiwan, Director of Global Strategies, Macau University, and he is a Fellow of American Physical Society and Honorary Professor of 15 universities. So I have the pleasure of introducing Professor Feng Daxuan.
I am profoundly honored that I have an opportunity to express my deep appreciation to my almost childhood friend, KK Phua, at an event to celebrate his 80th birth year. I've known KK very well for well over half a century, although I have known him even when we were in elementary school, where he was 2 years ahead of me. With his ubiquitous intellectual interests, his impact on my life is simply profound, and for that, I'm deeply grateful. Therefore, I'd like to use this opportunity to expound how he had impacted me. The life and accomplishments of KK is a reflection of our home country, Singapore. Singapore is a country with essentially no landmass, no significant population, and literally no natural resources. And yet, it is one of the most, if not the most successful nations in the world today. Deep down in KK's heart, there is no doubt he loves physics in general and particle physics in particular. Even though Singapore is not and probably will never be a major physics hub in the world, this did not discourage KK at all. In fact, KK for more than a decade ingeniously found the necessary resources, both financial and people, to establish one of the world's most intellectually worthy centers, known as the Institute for Advanced Studies in Nanyang Technological University. In this center, questions regarding the profound meaning about our universe were constantly queried. Let me quote what Cecilia Jaskov of Lund University in Sweden and the past president of the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics said in the Quantum Mechanics 90 conference in the center. She said, and I quote, "I used to be living peacefully because I knew what the ultimate building blocks of our universe were. Now, in this conference, we learn only that we know 5% of the mass of the universe. The rest are supposedly the dark matter. That makes me so uncomfortable." How elegant a comment that was made right in Singapore, a country that was not known for its scientific ambience. This comes about simply because of KK's deep intellectual curiosity as a scientist. About KK as an individual who transparently and deeply entangles with his roots. Well, that is his Chinese culture. It constitutes an integral part of his DNA. While he no doubt loves Singapore, he also loves no less his Chinese heritage. Here again, I could testify to the fact. In the spring of 2016, KK, out of the blue, invited me to give a talk on the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, in Singapore. Apparently, this is his deep and normal interest in following the trends of what is happening in China. I am sure KK realized that when he invited me to speak on this topic, it gave me with the incentive to learn about what the BRI was all about. Indeed, his invitation again planted a seed in my mind to eventually, and with his encouragement, to write a book on the subject. Today, literally with KK's kickstart, I am consumed by this topic in my post-physics and post-administration career. KK is a treasure for Singapore and for the world of science. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lai Choi Heng. He's the Emeritus Professor of Physics at NUS, got his degree in 1978, PhD from University of Chicago, and then in 1980 came back and joined NUS as a lecturer. He is an expert on nonlinear dynamical systems, quantum chaos, complex systems, quantum information, quantum computation. He's the head of, or was the head of computer science, head of physics, dean of science, and the vice provost of NUS, executive vice president of Yale NUS, and he is the deputy director of CQT, Center for Quantum Technologies. So may I invite Professor Lai?
To me, this is a very serious occasion. So I feel very inadequate without a piece of paper in my hands. All right, I knew of KK way before he knew of my existence. Towards the end of my high school education, I was applying for admission to Nanyang University by examination, which at that point in time was conducted at various schools all over Malaysia. I also wanted to do physics, so I checked up on the information about the physics department at Nanta. Now bear in mind that there was no Mr. Google at that point in time. It was non-trivial to get the information. But lucky for me, I found that there were 4 young theoretical particle physicists in the Department of Physics at Nanta at that point in time. KK Phua, Sim Hock Kee, Chu Chong Kee, and Ko Cho Jin. The whole department, in fact, was a very young department, all lecturers, no more. Well, it was not to be. I got admitted to Nanta, but I went to the University of Chicago instead, and the full financial aid offered by Chicago being pretty much the deciding factor. Well, fast forward 4 years, and in 1976, I just began my dissertation research under Chris Quick of Fermilab. And KK in that year was also spending part of his sabbatical time at Argonne National Laboratory nearby. And we finally first met inside Yojiro Nambu's office for the first time. Well, I think KK's charisma, enthusiasm, and passion planted actually in me the seed of possibly joining him at Nanyang University when I'm finished with my graduate study. And my thinking was that if I could not be his student, then perhaps I could be his junior apprentice. It was through KK's efforts, no less, that I was appointed to a faculty position at the then University of Singapore after my 2 years of postdoctoral research stint at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen. The merger of Nanyang University and the University of Singapore within 10 days of my arrival meant that suddenly KK and I were indeed colleagues within the same university. And there began decades of friendship in many forms and shapes. Well, all I have to say is that KK, over the years, I appreciate, is a very generous man in many forms. He cares about his juniors like me and generously shares his ideas, insights, suggestions. His enthusiasm has always been contagious, and he follows up with his supportive spirit and encouragement. How lucky it was for me to be able to start my professional development as a physicist under his care and encouragement. I figure that over the last more than 40 years, I don't thank KK enough for his guidance and help, and his particularly exceptionally generous concerns towards my late father. A sidetrack that KK also initiated me on was my involvement with the very early days of the World Scientific Publishing Company. From Saturday mornings in a very small office at Bras Basah complex, I learned the ropes of editing book volumes, and I helped design the LaTeX templates for the early World Scientific journals. I admired KK's immense circle of contact, or should I say influence, and his ability to tangle with the luminous and often overwhelming and intimidating figures in the scientific world, something which, unfortunately, I didn't fail to pick up, not even by osmosis, despite all these years of apprenticeship. Well, the moral of the story is there's the one reason why World Scientific has become successful. Well, scratch that. Correction. There are at least two reasons why World Scientific has been so successful. That brings me to my next point. KK is also a very lucky man. He has a very capable, far-sighted, balanced, and with an equally courageous wife. Doreen has my admiration not just for being the other reason why World Scientific has been successful, but also, surprisingly, for quote-unquote taming some of KK's tremendous impulses. Together, they are a formidable and, to a great extent, invincible team. KK is also very lucky to have two very, what's the word to use? Strong and capable children. Like I mentioned, I first met Nee and Max when they were still little kids, way back in 1976. At that time, being called uncle by them was pleasant, a sign of promotion to the rank of their father. But now, when this mother of two and a father of four calls me Uncle Choi Heng, I cannot help but feel old. I'm glad and honored to have this opportunity to be at this book launch celebrating KK's 80th birthday. Well, according to Uncle Confucius, you become independent and stand on your own when you reach 30. You become immune to temptations at 40. You pretty much know your life fate at 50. At 60, you can positively face criticisms. And 70, you can do whatever your heart desires without violating any rules. I checked, nobody said anything about 80. Partly because Confucius passed away at 71. So I'm going to make one up for this. KK, at 80, may you rise to another level in the coming years, both in influence and impact, and many, many happy times with the family. Happy birthday, KK.
I wasn't confused. The next speaker is Baki, B.E. Baki. He is a PhD from Cornell, joined NUS as a senior lecturer in 1984, and retired as professor 2016. Well, he retired not because he wanted to be a retiree. He went on to be professor of finance, Global University of Islamic Finance, Malaysia. He's an expert on quantum field theory, expert on finance, expert on microeconomics, expert on modeling human consciousness. And now he is the advisor to helixtab.com. Well, I would like to invite Dr. Baki up.
Thank you. I'm going to focus on KK's personal and private self, which is so precious to all of us. So, Professor KK Phua, Ms. Doreen Liu, Nee, Max, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here to celebrate KK's 80th birthday. I've always considered him to be my mentor, my guru, my friend, and my colleague. It's been a long 40 years since I first met KK in ICTP at Trieste, where we were introduced by Professor Salam. And it is a long year, many years that we've been close friends, and also friends of each other's families. It's been a pleasure for me to see both Nee and Max grow up to be such wonderful children. And may God bless you. KK is a warm and considerate friend, and he was instrumental in my decision to join NUS in 1984, and I was warmly welcomed by him here. I remember a small incident which will illustrate to you what a great soul KK is. He may have forgotten this. So when we came here, me and my wife, we didn't know anything about Singapore, how things function here, where to go, what to do. So I mentioned to KK that, I have to get my electrical connection and I don't know what to do. He said, is that so? I said, yes. He said, well, I will take you to PUB and I will make sure you get the connection and do all the paperwork for you. So it may seem a small thing, but to me and my wife, we always admired and KK and were inspired by his generous spirit and his kind heart. That is what comes through with all of what he does, his sincerity and his genuineness. That is what you take away when you interact with him. The contributions of KK to physics in Singapore, in my view, are unparalleled. I was here in the department for 32 years, and I saw the amazing enthusiasm and the tireless effort that he put into promoting physics. I participated in quite a few of the numerous meetings and conferences that KK organized. So from the outset, sourcing the luminaries of physics, the speakers, arranging the funds, organizing the logistics of the actual meeting, everything was carried out flawlessly under KK's leadership. And not once, time and again, he organized diverse meetings. Every one was a success. And that's the hallmark of KK, that he has the magic touch. KK has put Singapore on the world map of physics, as many have mentioned, has organized many meetings, important meetings, involving thousands of physicists and many Nobel laureates. And of course, he continued his work to promote science as the founding director of IAS, as has been mentioned. So that's his scientific persona. The other side of him, which we all know and has been alluded to, is his entrepreneurial energy and dynamism, which came to the forefront with World Scientific, and this is legendary. His optimism and his quest for excellence with invaluable support from his dear wife, Ms. Doreen Liu, is the driving force which has led to World Scientific becoming a world-class publisher. If you work with KK, you realize one thing straight away. He's aiming for the best. He never wanted to have anything besides the best in whatever he did. And that spirit is what really permeates all the achievements he had. And that's what also inspired us who saw him at close range. So the growth of World Scientific is a tribute to KK's vision, and his vision was mentioned many times. There's another vision I'll mention to you, which has not been mentioned. He had this vision when I met him in Trieste. He said, I want a publishing house centered in Asia, serving the international community, but as well as the developed countries of the world. That was a key feature of his sort of rapport with Salam and with Yang, because they realized that most publishing was done in the West, which had a bias towards the Western universities. Asian publishers, even till today, have no real presence in the world of science. So World Scientific made a big breakthrough there as well. KK has been inspiration to all his friends, colleagues, and to co-workers, including myself. His generosity and kindness have won him numerous well-wishers the world over, with many being here today to wish him a happy 80th birthday. So KK, I wish you a long, happy, healthy life, full of even greater achievements, and look forward to our enduring friendship and collaboration. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Kwek, Leong Chuan Kwek. He's Associate Professor of the National Institute of Education. He is the co-director of the Quantum Science and Engineering Center at NTU, and he's the principal investigator in CQT, Center for Quantum Technology. And he's an expert on quantum information science and biomedical physics. He was the former deputy director of IAS at NTU. He's a fellow of AAAS, American Association for Advancement of Science, fellow of Institute of Physics in UK, and he's the past president of Institute of Physics in Singapore. Quack. Hi.
Right. Thank you, Nippon. I think I prepared some slides because something visual is always better than for me to to talk in words. I have some slides. So, as you have already heard from previous speakers, KK graduated first from Imperial College and then from Birmingham College. The next slide. And he has done a lot back to his own universities. For Birmingham, he has just donated some books and money. And also for the university, the Imperial College, he has set up an alumni association. Now here is an old album from the old Nanyang universities with all the young staff that was mentioned earlier on. And that, yes, if you click, that person at the far right, that is Professor K.K. Phua. Just click on it, highlight him in gold. And he has many students, but I highlight just two. Actually, there's Chun Ling, who is from Taiwan, who is also his student. But I highlight Kam Chan Hin, who became a vice president at NTU, and also Lau Hui Boon, who is also in the audience, I think, with his wife. So at that time, they were working. I know that the crowd here is basically not physics, but nevertheless, at that time, he was working on Veneziano model and subsequently on multiplicity, whatever that means. And they have produced some very good work done on these effects. And I think one of the paper was on the Cho-Yang model. I think next slide. We have to proceed very fast because I have many slides. So you see Kam Chan Him up there, and I think you will be able to meet Hui Boon somewhere in the audience. One of the first conference is not his first conference. You have heard that he has organized from Kenneth Young and also from earlier on from last spring. That he has organized conferences before, but one of the biggest conference that KK has brought to Singapore is actually a conference, part of this conference series from the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics, which he subsequently brought to Singapore, and I was, for many years, I was helping him with the secretariat. So this is what is called the Rochester Conference. And at the Rochester Conference, there was a banquet speech by C.N. Yang and also Bob Marshall. Okay, next one. I think we'll skip. And before 2005, we have heard many times that he has organized the so-called Institute of Advanced Studies. He established it at NTU. And there were questions why not at NUS. You can ask him when you have the time. But in any case, before that, in 2000, at the turn of the millennium, KK was well known for bringing to Singapore the Millennium Conference. And it's a physics conference, but in all areas of physics. And it is, in fact, this area, this conference, that has also brought the attention of several areas that Singapore is now investing its energy on. In 2005, as you have heard, he brought the 100 Years of Physics Symposium. Actually, a lot of this were organized at here at NUS. Eng Chai was there, and I thought I saw Eng Chai, but I think he has disappeared. And very importantly, in 2006, there's the International Workshop on Spintronics. Why do I mention that? Because the first winner of the OCPA Award, Physics Prize, Zhang Shouchen, was here as a speaker, and it was in fact in Singapore at NTU that he met a few other people, and they coined the word topological insulators. And that piece of work is of high significance because it would have won Shouchen his Nobel Prize easily. Unfortunately, of course, he didn't because he was, let's not talk about that. But he deserved the Nobel Prize. Next. So Tang and his collaborators predicted the existence of topological insulator, which was theoretically computed and also observed experimentally in Germany. Now, there were many conferences that is organized by KK at the Institute of Advanced Studies. If you had been in this auditorium earlier on, you will see this flash of slides on various conferences that he has gone through. Next. So by one of the big conference that he has organized, and this is one of the characteristics of KK, was that he always emphasized the need to reach out to young students. And this need to reach out to young students was manifest in one of the epitomized by this conference in 2007, when Xian Yang and Fan Zheng is an artist, gave a series of narratives, a debate in some sense, to an audience of more than 2,500 people. It was an immense, there were so many people who were interested to listen to both speakers that it spilled over to another lecture theater. You see some of the audience, you can also watch it. Of course, KK organized many birthday series, and it's like a who's school in physics and in science in particular. Next one. Celebrating birthdays of eminent scientists, including Julian Swinger, even though they were not around, but also people who are alive, and including Birger Anglert, if he's still around. Yes, next one. So lots of conferences will help. Go on. Next one. And one of the most memorable organization events that he has organized is the Singapore School of Physics. Now in Europe, there is what's called the Lezu School of Physics, where many people try to get in, and including Nobel laureates who would like to attend those schools. But for some reason, some of them were not given the opportunity. And this was how we brought the Lezu School of Physics and some other schools, famous school of physics from Europe, all the way to the hot tropical climate in Singapore. Next. École de Physics, yes, next one. École de Physics, of course, is established by C.C. DeWitt. And a long list of who's who in sciences, and also in the arts. Next. Yeah, I don't want to go through this list, it will bore you. One of the most important conferences that you ever heard about is this conference in which we have something like 2 dozens of famous eminent scientists, namely Nobel laureates, who came to Singapore to give talks and outreach talks to young scientists. And this was brought based on the original idea of Lindau. So in fact, NRF approached KK in 2011 or thereabouts to conceptualize organizing such a conference. And for many years, he was chairing this conference. Okay, next one. The International Science Youth Forum at Hua Chong University. So this will now reach on to another aspect of KK's work and contribution to Singapore education, where he helped set the stage for good schools in Singapore to participate and interact with well-known scientists. And there were lots of memorandum of understandings organized with the French Physical Society, with the Korean Institute of Advanced Studies, with the AAPPS, Association of Asia Pacific Physics Society. And he donated prizes, but he also received a prize from the Institute of Physics. KK has also contributed to many schools. He sits on the Hua Chong Diploma Board, the NUS High School, and Pioneer Junior College for many years, and the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, who's the first director. I thought I saw him around. And he wrote articles. Unlike some of us, we focusing on research, what he did was that he has exert his influence over the Chinese press. And at some stage, of course, if you read Chinese, of course, you will see many of his articles being published by the local newspaper. Next one. He is also very active in the Singapore-China Friendship Association. And in fact, he was the chairman for many years. Next one. And also the Tankaki. In fact, in 1986, together with the suggestions of C.N. Yang, he established the Tankaki Young Inventor Award, which has just been concluded a few days ago by Professor Lim Yao Ki, if he's around. And he has also established the Singapore-China Business Association, the Singapore council member of the Chinese Heritage Center at NTU, and many, many others, including Cui Hua Ling clubs. For many years, he was helping to run. So I think I do not, he has so many achievements that I cannot account for it within such a short period. But I would like to say something towards the end, which I think Chua Heng did, and also Bella Baki did earlier on, which to say that KK's achievement would not have been possible without the support of his beautiful wife. And I think this is very important because we hope that they will continue to love each other and that they will support each other in this journey. And I think, let me say a few words of wish that you will have a happy birthday. 生日快樂. Thank you.
You know, he should have been the MC because he really gives a very good, presentation of the slides. I would not have been able to do that. Well, the next, we will have a live speaker. Oh, Honorable George Yeo. He's the patron of IAS since 2011. He's been in the Singapore cabinet for 20 years, from 1991 to 2011, And he has been in the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Information, Communication and Arts. And I found out that Esplanade was one of his suggestions, and it really brought a lot of tourists to come to see Singapore, the bridge. Asian Civilization Museum, and then he was in the Ministry of Health and introduced traditional Chinese medicine. Now, that's important because in America, they'll say, ooh, what is traditional Chinese medicine? Yeah, it is this. But it is important that Singapore, because of George Yeo, trade and industry, and in the foreign ministry, free trade agreement with Asian countries, with ASEAN. And then I discovered that George Yeo got the 2012 Padma Bhushan Prize in India, which is the third highest civilian award. Then in 2012 was given the Order of Sikatuna in Philippines, the rank of Datu. And then he's the honorary officer of the Order of Australia. Oh, it is such an honor that we can have George Yeo to give a tribute to his good friend, KK. Honorable George Yeo.
I'm not a physicist. I wish I were, but I'm only an engineer. Around 1991 or 92, on my in tray was a book wrapped in thick plastic titled Pacific Echoes. It had a foreword written by Joseph Needham, a man whom I deeply admired and benefited from. So I read the book. It speculated about early contact between Shang China and Mesoamerica. I looked at the back, World Scientific Publisher, Singapore. I was intrigued that a publisher in Singapore should have an interest in such a subject. Later on, maybe a couple of years later, I was at a lunch at Hua Zhong, and seated across me was Dr. K.K. Phua. I said, where are you from? He said, oh, I'm running World Scientific. The connection was made in my mind. And I was interested to know more about him and what prompted him to be interested in a subject like this. And we became friends. He was very kind to my father. After my mother died in 1991, he would accompany my father every year back to Teochew. We are Tang Hyo Nang, we are from the same ancestral district in Chaoshan. He didn't tell me. My father would tell me that, oh, KK is bringing me back. Over the years, he has been an encouragement to me. And after I left office in 2011, he encouraged me to compile my speeches into a book, which I didn't want to do because it would have been too much work. But after his many proddings, I summoned up the energy to do it, for which I was enormously grateful. He knew I was involved in the Vatican, and one day he said, hey, meet my friend Remo Ruffini from the International Center for Relativistic Astrophysics. So I thought, oh, well, why not? So I had a free day. Professor Ruffini brought me to the Vatican Observatory, Jesuit institution, where I learned that there was an annual colloquium called the Xu Guangqi Galileo Galilei Annual Colloquium for Relativistic Astrophysics. Quite a mouthful. Xu Guangqi was a Chinese minister in the Ming Dynasty who was converted by Matteo Ricci to Catholicism. So his family, the Xi family, is the land which became the French Quarter. Xu Jiahui in Shanghai today is from that family. He never met Galileo Galilei, but they were contemporaneous in the 16th century, and both were astronomers and mathematicians. And it provided platform for interaction between two civilizations. As Roman Catholic, I was particularly proud that the church always stood at the forefront of science, believing that there you'll find God, that God is not always in retreat because of the advance of the frontier of science. No, God was there. God is there at the frontier. Ruffini brought me to Sapienza University in Rome and got me to meet a number of brilliant young scientists in their 20s who every day were studying cosmic bursts, which came from all directions, and exploring the first few nanoseconds of a supernova, or things like that. I understood nothing, of course, but it absolutely fascinated me. And when I hear the background of all the distinguished speakers before me, I said, wow, you're all remarkable minds. I hope one day you'll be able to explain why we have Chinese medicine and Western medicine. They proceed from different directions. I think one day, like the wave and particle theory of light, they will converge. And probably quantum mechanics will provide that convergence as we better understand meridians and acupuncture points and how, by a thought, we can activate many things. I used to meet Cousin Huang at your house, Chinese New Year, and I still read with pleasure what he wrote on the I Ching, and things we now do not understand, but will one day understand. Culture has always interested KK. So he's got two parallel tracks in his mind, right? Culture and physics. Why in the same mind? Well, one day we will know. But we can understand culture as a meta system which connects us as human beings. And if we think of each human being as a computational system, then culture is a meta computational system. So you guys one day should explain all these things and make it more comprehensible to engineers. But on your 80th birthday, KK, I want to thank you and Doreen for being an inspiration, for your encouragement, and for all your help to my father, to me and my wife, and to my family. Congratulations.
Now, in the original program, we had more videos, but I think for those who have recorded videos, they will be available on the website, because right now we want to come to Max Phua, who is the managing director of World Scientific. And now the father has great connections with all the important scientists all around the world. But you need somebody to actually manage the company. And the son has been a very good manager. And he helped the company go electronic. So that now 65% of the company revenue comes from digital. Well, that takes management. And he is now currently president of Singapore Book Publishers Association and former council member of the Book Development Council of Singapore. And now I would like to invite Max. Where is he? Oh, he's standing over here. Max, come.
Thanks, Uncle. Oops, I cannot say Uncle anymore. Right? So, family and friends, on behalf of my dad, Mom, me, Clive, and Pei Ming, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this book launch this afternoon to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday. It really means a lot to him to see all of you here today. Many he has not seen for 2 years or even longer because of the pandemic. So thank you so much for attending this afternoon. Also, thank you, friends and relatives who are joining us via Zoom. Many are actually overseas and staying awake late or gotten up early this morning to join us. Special thanks to all the contributors to his birthday volume, all his dear friends who has just spoken today, who actually I've known since I was really young, my sister, and it's really great to see all of you here. And you know, I really want to continue calling you uncle, aunties. And also the video recording. My dad has always been a very sociable person since his student days, with a wide network of friends. There's actually one person in his life who has been his pillar of support for over 50 years, my mom. I think this is a bit of a recurring theme here, but they actually studied together in Hong Kong first, and then in the UK, raised a family, started a business together, and like so many of the speakers before me, World Scientific would not have been possible without the strong support of both my mom and dad. And she's been with him through thick and thin, ups and downs. My mom has always been with him, so we would like to give thanks to my mom for all her years of love and support to my dad. Yeah. My dad's 4 passions, physics, publishing, education, and Chinese culture, have driven him every day for many years. And it is great to see that he continues to be so closely involved in all of them, which he actually derives great joy and fulfillment. You can see his energy level increase a few folds when he's back in the office speaking and discussing about any one of these topics. So it's really great to see all of you here today, and I'm sure my dad will catch up, and my mom will also catch up with you all individually after this event. Thank you so much.
And now we come to a part which really comes from their hearts. For all of the successors, ability to do it at NUS and at NTU, they want to now make a donation. To NUS and to NTU, it is a family donation. And first, there will be a donation to NUS Physics Department, $75,000, but that does not come from Papa's pocket. It comes from Nee and Max. They want to make a donation to present it to the father, who then will present it to the NUS Physics Department. Now, $75,000 is to be matched by the MOE, Ministry of Education, so that 75 really becomes 150,000. And now it is a great privilege to invite KK, Nee, Max, and Professor Gong Jiangbing, who is the head of physics department at NUS. Now, yeah, I know. Gong, you want to say anything? Yeah, all right.
Okay, it is really a great honor to be part of this celebration for KK Pa's 80 years birthday. What I learned today is that a birthday party at 18 years old is to receive gifts, and a birthday party at 80 years old can be about giving. So on behalf of all colleagues, and many of my colleagues are here today, and all students from Physics Department of NUS. A really big thank you to KK Pa and the whole family for this very kind and generous donation to the Physics Department of NUS. The donated fund, as just announced by our chairman, is to set up a new prize in the name of KK Pa. And this annual prize is going to recognize the best undergraduate student in theoretical and computational physics, and the best master student overall in the Physics Department of NUS. So thank you very much, KK Pa. So allow me also to say something a little bit more from a student perspective. Yeah, we heard a lot of things just now, but I'd like to offer a new perspective from a student point of view. Right? We know that KK Pa is actually the most senior colleague listed on the Department of Physics and US at 80 years old. Yeah? So he's no longer teaching our undergraduate students for many years, but our undergraduate students are still being taught by textbooks published by KK Pa's child, World Scientific. Right? At the graduate student level, I don't think KK Pa recently is supervising any PhD student. Right? However, as you just have heard, right, many graduate students, or even all graduate students in Singapore, have benefited tremendously from all those amazing conferences organized by KK Pa, especially through the Institute of Advanced Studies. Yeah, thank you very much, KK Pa. So I could say that in Singapore, for a PhD student in physics, right, if you have never been to a conference organized by KK Pa, he should not be given a degree from Singapore. So in short, KK Pa is a professor like no others. He's nowhere to be found on NUS campus, but he's everywhere in Singapore. Yeah, thank you. So finally, back to this KK Pa Prize in Physics. Right? I think now we can use this to better connect students with KK Pa. Yeah, I hope from day one on campus, our students can be inspired by KK Pa as a real legend, as a real inspirational figure in Singapore. Right? We hope that our students can really learn from KK Pa's vision, his passion towards science, his wisdom, and most important of all, to learn from KK Pa's humble and great efforts to make a true big difference to the science and education in Singapore and overseas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kong. And now we want to come to NTU. After all, IAS was at NTU, even though some people say, how come IAS was not in the US? Well, that is a separate story. But now, Doreen would like to make a contribution and present it to NTU. But first, it's Doreen giving the check to KK, and then KK presenting it to Vice President Lian Xiaosi. And I was so very pleased and surprised to learn that Professor Lian Xiaosi, who is the Vice President of the office, NTU Office of University Advancement, was actually KK's student in physics. So may I invite Doreen, KK, and Professor Lian to come up.
Miss Doreen Liu, Professor KK Phua, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm delighted to be here today with all of you for the check presentation ceremony commemorating Ms. Doreen Liu's $75,000 gift towards the KK Phua Gold Medal. Ms. Liu's generous gift is also in honor of her husband, Professor KK Phua's 80th birthday this year. I would like to take this opportunity to wish Professor Phua a very happy birthday, good health, and longevity. One of Singapore's foremost scientists, Professor Phua is a man of many hats: scientist, researcher, educator, publisher, and philanthropist. Through his many contributions, Professor Phua has encouraged and inspired generations of students and continues to influence many young people about the splendor of science. I was fortunate to have been Professor Phua's student during my undergraduate days at Nanyang University, where he taught me theoretical physics. I can fondly recall how Professor Phua classes make a deep impact on my own academic journey and inspired much of who I am today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for his tutorage, dedication, and contributions. Since starting NTU's Institute of Advanced Studies, IAS, in 2005, and serving as its founding director for 13 years, Professor Phua has led IAS to become an illustrious scientific institution in the Asia-Pacific region. True to Professor Phua's vision, IAS has been a champion of groundbreaking science and mathematics by NTU's research community and plays a key role to inspire youth through annual events such as the Global Young Scientists Summit and the International Science Youth Forum, which hosts Nobel laureates and eminent scientists from around the world. The establishment of the KK Phua Gold Medal will go a long way to recognize the most outstanding graduating students in research work of the Bachelor of Science in Physics, Applied Physics, or Mathematical Sciences from the School of Physical and Mathematical Sciences. The gold medal, with a value of up to $4,000, will be conferred to one outstanding awardee in each academic year. I would like to convey my deepest gratitude to Ms. Liu and Professor Phua for their immense generosity and lasting support of the university. We wish him a very happy 80th birthday and many more to come. Thank you.
Now, this is the moment that we all came today to celebrate. The moment to have this birthday cake. But now, before we can have the birthday cake, we have to have the whole family come up. So, KK, Doreen, and Nee, and Max, and your grandchildren come up. KK, you can say it.
Thank you. I'm really thank you so much that all of you come to this function. I'm from Yangzheng Primary School, and then secondary school from Chinese High School. But I spent quite some years in UK. So in a way, I am my education is both Western and Eastern culture. So I'm hoping that for the past 30 years or 40 years, I can make a little bit of contribution for the Western and Eastern culture in Singapore. Thank you.
Now I have prepared something to say before singing happy birthday, but after, it's still okay. You know why? Because it is a quotation from the book of Proverbs 9:11, and it says, "For through wisdom your days will be many, and years will be added to your life." And KK, you have had vision and you have had wisdom. Oh, may you continue to have more of such wisdom in leading the rest of the family to greater advancement. Amen? Amen. So now, we all saw the cake being cut, but then you can say, I came all the way, where's the cake? What they have said is, when you leave, you will each collect both the book, if you don't already have the book, and a piece of the cake. So, may you now all do what you please, but when you leave, you collect your piece of cake and eat it on your way home. Thank you so much for coming. Bye.